Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 3 of summer session of Com 350. I do apologize for being a day late on getting this video and your content out to you this week. Usually I get it done on the weekends. As you know, that's been my plan, my strategy, and my practice for the past couple of weeks. But unfortunately, this weekend got away from me. I'm sure you've all been experiencing sort of the rush of summer and the excitement piled on with the work. It's sometimes hard to keep up. So I do apologize. That should not happen again. I do want to let you know that I will be going on vacation July 1st through the 14th. However, you probably won't notice because it won't change anything online. I'll still have full access. I'll still be giving you your weekly information on Sunday evenings so that they post for you on Monday morning, and everything will stay the same. I just want to let you know, if you're trying to meet me in my office, which none of you have so far, but if you did, these 2 weeks will be pretty much out of pocket. So I'm not going to be able to do that. But if you need to see me when I get back, feel free to let me know and we'll schedule a time. 2 people have emailed me this week. One was asking, I believe, about the book, and the other one was about paper 1. And so what I would like to do is to get some feedback from you all. Hopefully you've all been able to get the book by now. Hopefully you can access it, whichever way that you do that, digitally or from the bookstore, or some other bookstore, Amazon maybe, or wherever, if you're renting it or if you're borrowing it or if you bought it. Either way, hopefully you have access to that now. It is the 3rd edition of the book, The Rhetorical Tradition by Bizel and Hertzberg. Now, people have asked if they could use other editions. It might be difficult, but not necessarily. I don't use anything out of the newer editions, so feel free to go ahead and use an older edition, and the page numbers will be off. I don't know if I provided page numbers. I think I just provided titles for you, so that if you did have a different edition or you were looking at it online, you'd be able to know exactly what it is that I want you to read. Okay, now let's recap this past week. Oh, before I do that, the second question about the paper, somebody asked me to give you all the assignment, and so I want to direct you to the syllabus, and under paper 1, there is a brief description of what I want you to do. There is also a rubric on Blackboard separate from that assignment on your syllabus that will tell you exactly what I'm looking for and how to sort of get yourself an A pretty easily. If that description is not sufficient, please let me know. If you need more direction, if you want me to be more restricted in the assignment itself, because right now it's basically open to you on what you write your paper about. So give that a check out and let me know if you need more detail than that or more direction. Okay, so what did you read in the last 2 weeks? We introduced you to Rhetoric, the Art of Knowing in Any Particular Instance All the Means of Persuasion by Aristotle. You also learned about the kinds and types of rhetoric, where rhetoric is used, and what Aristotle thought rhetoric should be used for, specifically for democracy, whereas Plato had given us this great lecture on how rhetoric is terrible and should not be used, and that we shouldn't have a democracy. We should have basically monarchies. He wanted sort of a poet and a philosopher and a man of wealth and power. And literally, we know that. That's what he wanted. And Aristotle sort of said, no, I don't really think that's the best way to go. But that's probably because Aristotle, as a student of Plato, thought Plato was, well, quite frankly, wrong a lot of the time. In the meantime, we have the sophists, and those sophists are going around practicing what they've always practiced, which is to say giving rhetoric a bad name because they used it just to make money, essentially, and they were unethical in how they did it. And then, of course, Socrates comes along and says, hey, guys, come on. Let's be better than that. And he starts his own school. And he doesn't quite go as deep as Aristotle and Plato in talking about sort of the philosophical and moral implications of rhetoric, but more about what rhetoric could do. Remember, he was the one who said that he will find immortality in what he shares with his students and how they share it. and carry on sort of the legacy of what he did while he was on Earth, rather than building a ship or whatever it is that they wanted him to do. So that's the first week. We have 4 main schools of thought coming out of classical Greece. Those are, again, Plato, Aristotle, Isocrates, and the Sophists. So now the question is, where do we go from here? What happens to rhetoric for the next 200 years? Well, the Sophists carry rhetoric around. They are still practicing it. But it was mainly practiced by people who were pagan, obviously, and at this point, because we are definitely before the Common Era. And it was practiced for the purpose of solving land wars, of resolving disputes about public events, obviously for criminal courts, and so on. So rhetoric was used for teaching and instruction, as well as for courtroom lawyering. Okay, so we know that. We know that the Sophists are today lawyers and teachers, essentially. Now, for those 200 years, Sophists keep rhetoric alive, and there is a great fall in Greece. Aristotle's banished. Alexander the Great conquers, but then he's ruler, and there's really not a great need for rhetoric anymore. And that's what we start to explore in Roman classical rhetoric. So classical Roman rhetoric obviously occurs in Rome and not Greece. That's probably obvious to you. But we move over there because the Sophists traveled. And so the people of knowledge, particularly, I mean, it's mainly men, we know that, carried their information and their teachings, wherever they went. And so we get into Rome and the height of its power. Now, there are 2 main eras in classical Roman rhetoric. The first is the Roman Republic. The second is the Roman Empire. Now, I'm going to put up a lecture going into very detailed explanations of what these are. But during the classical Greek period, we were sort of debating philosophy and rhetoric and ethics and morals and rhetoric. And in the Roman Empire and in the Roman Republic, what we're going to see is the relationship between rhetoric and power. Okay, so rhetoric is going to be defined by the power that exists. In the Roman Republic, which of course is a democracy, there's going to be a great need for rhetoric. And in the Roman Empire, there will be practically none. And so we're going to see the need for rhetoric seem to dissipate. When you watch that lecture, you'll get a detailed account of how rhetoric got such a bad name, but always keeping in mind the following rule of Roman rhetoric. The more democratic, or the more sort of empowerment you give to the multitudes, to the people, the greater the need for rhetoric. So decentralized power, given out to as many people as possible, shared among as many people as possible. Decentralized power increases the need for rhetoric and the knowledge of rhetoric and how to use it. Whereas centralized power, that is to say 1, 2, or 3 rulers, very few people who have that concentrated power, the less need there is for rhetoric. And a lot of my students tell me when they first hear that it sounds backwards, but I'm going to implore you to pay attention to the lecture and figure that out. And we'll talk more about that. So classical Greece that we just got through drudgingly, I'm sure it's not the easiest stuff to read, was all about philosophy and rhetoric, the truth and rhetoric. Now we're getting into the relationship between power and rhetoric. So to keep that in mind as you read, and if you need more lecture on the classical Roman rhetoric, let me know. Once we get through the Greek and the Roman eras, time flies for us. We will start doing more and more, greater number of philosophers, greater number of philosophical thinkings about rhetoric, because we are going to start to have better access to that information. For right now, we're relying on classical works that are very few and also very difficult to read. So hopefully it will get easier. Let's get through the Romans first. In here, you're going to find some pretty easy stuff to note and to understand. And the more difficult stuff, I will definitely let you know about. Also, just as a final note, I want you to know that you will have a review lecture prior to exam one. So you will have a lecture that reviews exactly what you need to know for exam one, and hopefully that helps. Okay, questions, comments, complaints, concerns, etc. You know where to put them, and I will be in touch again very soon.